Hello, everybody.
Oh, hi.
Oh, they're all waving at you and joining.
Cool. Saturday? It is Saturday. It doesn't feel like Saturday.
It is Saturday night, and I ain't got nobody.
Not true.
Money, buddy.
Both, I think.
I don't.
I think the lyrics go both directions. I ain't got no money at one point, and I ain't got no body at another.
Oh, really? Your organic style is very inspiring, Reynolds says.
Thank you. If my friend Daryl is watching, there's a circle.
Oh, the circle.
He asked me to draw a circle, and of course I use a circle template.
You know why he asked you to draw a circle?
Because he wants me to do one of those drawings in the middle of it, like I did the last time on the time-lapse.
Time-lapse drawing. Saturday night ritual. Hey, Stephen Russell Black is here.
Hey. Steve's got a Eat Cool looking EDO in progress that he posted pictures of earlier. I think it's on his Patreon that it shows.
Stephen Russell Black. Another cool artist.
So, what's everybody doing?
I don't know what everyone is doing. I'm exhausted. I love all the rainbow hearts.
All the
little hearts are rainbows.
Oh, that's awesome. That's cool.
I mean, Stephen says hi and thanks, Alan.
Yeah. Stephen Russell Black is one of the people that's going to be in the group show that I'm curating for Copro Gallery.
In August, yes.
In August. It's the Personal Gods show. And if you haven't seen his work before, just find him on Instagram or Google his name, Stephen Russell Black.
Right. It said relaxing. Always nice to tune in and watch the sorcery. You guys are great.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you.
Carl Wilson is drawing all night.
Who?
Clarence says hello, everyone.
Cool.
You are a master of graphite.
Oh, I appreciate the kindness.
Chicken.
But not chicken. No, I did okay with the chicken.
You did it. You were very funny.
Vicky asked me to shred the chicken from the crock pot earlier today.
You were just taking advantage of my exhaustion.
And I told her that I put it in the blender, and she believed me.
Someone at Contemplate Life asked, what are you drawing?
Don't know yet. Right now it's kind of an eye socket shape. The circle is only there to kind of use as a guideline, and also because my friend Daryl, who I don't even know if he's on there, has been asking me for like the last 2 months to draw a circle. So.
I am convinced that this is witchcraft.
I appreciate that. That's actually a huge compliment. Sometimes it feels like it because a lot of what I do is intuitive. I don't think about it as much because I guess I've done it a lot, and I trust what I do. That even if I make mistakes, I can come to a conclusion that I like. And I like thinking that maybe there's an aspect to doing art that is witchcraft, even though it doesn't serve people who are trying to learn how to do it to think of it like that. But I feel like it feels like that sometimes. But.
Do you take inspiration from Zdzisław Beksiński?
Of course, I do, actually, to the point that I wish I had been aware of his work earlier when he was still alive. He's sort of an interesting. I kind of both him and I always say it both ways because I'm not sure what Giger or Geiger. Giger, I think.
Yes.
Did a sort of an exploration of texture, but Giger took a mechanical exploration to texture, and Beksiński went to the organic side of it.
Mm-hmm. Black Diamond says, hi, Father.
Oh, hi.
And I cannot translate from Spanish, I'm sorry. So, George, you'll have to translate for me. I just love how good this dude is. Oh, he's talking about you.
Oh, thank you.
It's honestly unreal. No, it's real.
Well,
Yeah, I'm being funny.
you know, sometimes when I do like a thing like this, which is,
What are you doing?
well, he's probably, it looks like he's going to turn into sort of either a
nose.
minotaur or a satyr type.
That's not why you drew the circles before.
No, not all the time. But I mean, that's what I do a lot because I like playing with horn shapes because sometimes I'll find something that I'll try to remember for the next time.
Oh my god.
Or I'll,
Oh, remind me of the horn shape when you're done. Have you tried doing tattoos? Completely different form of art.
well, I've always said this. People have asked me this. I will start doing tattoos when they start putting an eraser on the end of those tattoo
Oh,
guns.
that's right.
You know?
Exactly. But it is a different art form. Just like graphic design
No,
is a completely different art form.
I think it's a beautiful. It can be an incredibly beautiful art form.
But it's
The process though is a process I'm not familiar with. I've actually had people take my work and make tattoos from it before. And I've designed things for people that have become tattoos. So in that respect, yes. But doing it myself is what I'm talking about. It's, I mean, you got a very slim margin for error working on somebody else's body.
He changes stuff too much in the middle of a piece.
So
Watching, let's see, your drawings made me think of the crazy genius of H.P. Lovecraft.
oh, thank you. I've always been I like the world building and the ethereal mythos and all that surrounding the Lovecraft stuff. It's something that I've always enjoyed.
Watching your work is contagious, always fun and inspiring. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
My love to you guys. Thank you. What did you end up doing with the clay board from last week? Anything come of it yet?
The one from last week?
No, it's sitting there.
No,
with the three things
it's
on
got
it. Right?
it's got a little bit of an idea trying to work its way through it, but I actually I stopped something to do the clay board process last week, and I had to go back to that. I was working on a piece for the solo show that's coming up, and then I had to start thinking about doing my everyday original piece, which is coming up too. So
That was your. It's the board from last week, the one that has the three.
it has 3 bright spots on it right now because I did the steel wolfing on it
Oh, that's
and
right.
2 other places after we finished.
You were playing with it.
Yeah.
Do you collaborate with other artists?
I have in the past. And I definitely have when it has come to doing a concept work and for film and I've done some game concept stuff too. There are times when I've never done any I don't know, a couple of real just wall hanging type art pieces. One of the first pieces I ever did was actually posted on Facebook recently.
Joe Phillips.
With Joe Phillips. He's a comic book artist and does all kinds of work actually. But he did a line art drawing of a sort of a hybrid river dragon, kind of a Chinese motif river dragon, and I did a value study of it. This was from a long time ago. It's like one of the first pieces I ever showed anywhere. But that was a total collaboration too.
Mm-hmm. Someone named off a bunch of tattoo people you should look at.
Well,
have to go back
when we go
and-
back through it,
I'll
I
have to
definitely.
go back and write it
I actually do that, by the way. I do go back through and write down people's names and go and check them out and stuff after the fact.
Are you familiar with Dark Souls or Berserk?
Dark Souls or Berserk. Now, are those people, or we're talking about the game Dark Souls?
Probably the game.
I'm familiar with it. I wouldn't say that I'm knowledgeable about
Someone
it.
else asked about Berserk today on the post that I put in the war up. Amy Baker Art says hi.
Hey, Amy Baker. How are you doing? So,
Actually, she gave you little lovey faces.
that's
Oh, he says the game.
the game. Yeah, I've seen a lot of artwork from it. I actually think I might have somewhere running around an art of book somewhere. I think.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. So.
Sometimes I accidentally hit the screen and things come up. Your work is unbelievable. It got me inspired.
Oh, thank you. This is I've said this before. This is my social interaction for the week. This is pretty much what I do.
It's true. All I was doing was socially interacting today, and I'm half asleep standing up here.
But that's because you went to a fair.
Oh my God.
And
I had to
then
drive to New Orleans this morning
somebody
at
to the airport.
5:30, then drive back and drop our son off, and then drive back here and pick Maeve up, our daughter, up, take her to the fair. She flew herself around on all those rides, danced in her thing, then she flew around again. Then I had to go pick him up. It's like, that's all I've been doing.
This
Alexandru says hi.
Who?
Alexandru.
Oh, hello, Alexandria.
The problem is I just want to go draw myself and not watch live. You can
Well,
watch it
that's
if you want.
that's okay. Just go and draw and then come back to it. That's kind of what I'll start watching people work, and I'll watch process videos, or I'll look at like inspiration folders, and I get like maybe 10 minutes into it, and then I can't look anymore. I've got to go work, because if it's if it's good enough to want to watch, it's probably good enough it'll inspire you, hopefully. To I do.
Amy Baker Art says we make her night, but
Oh.
I saw pictures of her night the other night, or either must have been last night.
Which one?
Did she see her all dressed up?
I saw a picture where she was giving a.
She was going out to a big old party.
Oh, I saw a picture where she was giving Hellboy a hug too. I mean,
Ron Perlman.
Ron Perlman, yeah.
How did you begin getting involved in the art scene? You guys are flying through here. I'm about to graduate college, and I've been struggling to keep a specific style.
Oh, well, the style thing is a bigger question, but how I got involved in art was sort of weird, and I mean I started by actually I focused a lot on gaming, like RPG stuff. That's the kind of stuff I had experienced. It's like most of what I knew about art came from comic books when I was young, and then gaming like D&D and stuff like that. And so the stuff I grew up like idolizing, I guess you could say, and wanting to be a part of was like Dungeons and Dragons and the old school stuff like that, and copying drawings out of comic books. I used to draw Spider-Man all the time. I used to, that's sort of how I learned. I guess a lot of stuff was just doing it as play. But I got involved in the business by I started sending my work to conventions through the mail. Because
And attending conventions.
And attending conventions.
We used to attend conventions on spec.
Yeah.
Just maybe.
A lot
Amy
of shit.
says she is watching from the ball. You're crazy. What are you doing watching us?
From what ball?
She said a big, huge, ball to celebrate.
But the stuff that I did, I started. I did some of the first contract work I did was for Car Wars.
Yes.
It was a Steve Jackson's a GURPS game, and it was cars, which I'm not.
Wars.
I'm not that fond of drawing.
Cars. You hate drawing boats and cars.
Which is funny because I have a piece in my head right now that's going to involve a lot of cars.
No way.
But actually real cars.
We love you too, Amy. Books you recommend? How do you recommend someone who wants to learn to draw to start to draw? Self-study, hire an illustrator?
I mean, if you the learning process kind of starts the same way, I guess. With a lot, the first thing you have to do is just start handling a pencil. If it's about drawing, just like if you want to learn to paint, you just have to start handling it, and not be too concerned about what you're doing, whether or not it looks good right away. But I mean, any of the like basic drawing books you can find out there are going to give you basic stuff like, you want. I would actually, if I had it to do over, would probably have done a more academic stand.
Route.
Route. I would have probably started with something like the
Atelier?
there's a Charles Barks drawing guide. It's a book, but and you can find these plates online. But what they do is have black and white reproductions of drawings, and what you're supposed to do is try to copy the values side by side, and so you can get a handle on values and stuff. I mean, there's that for academic drawing, but I think if you're wanting to do something imaginative, what you also have to do along with that is just start drawing, and making stuff up as you go along. And then when you need realism, that's when you go and look at realism. You go and look at like a photograph for reference or something. But like I know there's a lot of people that grew up doing academic work that can't sit down and just make things up,
Right.
which is depends on which direction you go in. It's not a limitation depending on what kind of work you want to do. But if you want to do imaginative realism or fantasy or any of the kind of stuff that I guess that I do, you need to be able to have the ability to imagine it, if not imagine it wholly, take a piece of reference and imagine it to be somewhat different than what it is,
Right.
and still make it within the realm of believability or acceptability in terms of style.
This kind of jumps to another question, or it involves it. It says, I'm inspired by the realism and detail in your work, but also simplified in cartoon stylization. Any tips on finding a balance with your inspirations to create more harmonious personal work?
Finding the balance is probably the hard part, because if you just study stylized work, you end up coming out with an even further stylized representation of that kind of work. If you're going to do figures, you need to do both be able to make up figures, but also use a heightened level of observation to observe figures when you work, so that you can bring believability to the image, right?
Hey,
So,
Julie Beck.
okay. And so what I end up doing is I'll make something up entirely, but what I'll also bring to it is a knowledge of, I guess you could say, a comparative anatomy that I've sort of gotten from just drawing a lot of human figures. It used to be that I wouldn't draw people at all. I was terrified of them.
That's all you
And
do.
then it got to a point where I actually did pinup work for a while when I first started, and I only did human figures, primarily female figures, for a long time, and then I got kind of bored just doing figures and started kind of moving in other directions too. So,
Someone
but
was asking about pricing work.
pricing work
How do we
become
price? Someone else answered. We usually price your pieces by size
yeah, and it's
and time involved.
yeah, that's true, and it can become a very relative topic depending on who you are and what stage in your career you are, and what you can command for the work that
Right.
you
We
do.
also base on what other of your pieces have sold, right?
Right. Yeah.
Are you ambidextrous at all?
I don't know. I'm
No.
not ambidextrous. I could probably pretend to be ambidextrous for a brief period, but it would drive me crazy. If
Don't get him started.
if I focus hard enough, I can draw with my left hand. It's just not. There's no
Good.
fluidity in it.
It's not good. Sorry.
So,
Are there any plans on doing a big compilation book of your work?
yes.
Yes.
Actually,
It is going to be kickstarted March of next year. He already owns some prints and sketch. They'd like a compilation book. So, yes, that is happening. That, and you can find us here on I_JustDraw, obviously, since you guys are here. Twitter, we're at I_JustDraw. YouTube is Alan Williams Studio. And our website is Alan Williams Studio.
how's Julie doing?
Julie Beck.
Yeah.
She's Julie B. Creative.
Ah.
She teaches up at the Boston
It's Atelier, right?
Academy of Art.
Academy,
Yes. Another great artist to look at.
Yeah.
I think you'll be needing a pencil extender, Clarence says.
I will, definitely.
How big is that pencil?
This right there.
Well, that's probably the end of what you do, and then you add it on.
What's fun though is when they get this small though, they become like, it's almost like drawing with the end of your finger.
Where can they see some of your pinup work?
The pinup stuff isn't. If you. It's hard
We're
to say.
laughing because it'll come up if you Google it
If you Google my name, you'll eventually run across it
somewhere.
somewhere.
But you'll go, well, this isn't the same guy.
I
'cause it doesn't
I
look-
didn't claim that it was good pinup. I just said pinup. It was early on, and it was what I was still trying to figure out, what all this stuff is about for me.
Oh,
You know.
Julie said that Graydon Parish is doing a workshop here right now.
Oh, really? He's up there. I did a color mixing class with Graydon Parrish, and it was the best money I've spent for 2 weeks worth of instruction.
Yeah, well, yes.
Not that you can tell by the black and white stuff that I do.
It would be nice if you'd start painting.
But, yeah.
Nudge, nudge, hint, hint.
You're poking me.
I am poking you. Yes, there will be signed books and sketches and different things. Yes. I will get that in different. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
So.
Oh, they're talking about their love of Vasari Brilliant Turquoise.
The what now?
The Vasari.
Oh, Vasari. Yeah, he was the guy that turned me onto that. By the way, that I guess it's one of the most chromatically intense colors you can get.
Do you have any anxiety, and if so, has drawing helped you with it?
I tell people it's like it's it's the secret. It's like the Hulk. I'm always frustrated, which is another way of saying I have a layer of anxiety, and yes, not just in the work that I do I sometimes get anxiety because I want it to work out, but also in the world we live in causes a lot of anxiety, and I deal with it usually by working. I feel like it's more of a positive force to promote in the world when so many things don't seem very positive right now. So.
All right. Happy Father's Day tomorrow.
Oh, thank you.
Luckily, you'll go to sleep and we can go get you stuff.
This is true because I sleep mostly during the day.
He does.
So. I did a guy like this one time for one of the Del Toro jobs. We were working on the Killings on Carnival Row, and it ended up being it looked like he was styled after those old Assyrian or Babylonian sculptures where the guys would have those long beards that would like come out and curl, but they were very precisely sculpted.
Yes.
All
right, I have some other questions here, and then I have to bounce off of that thought that you just said. Someone else said, "You're insane. They're in love with your work." A Meadowlark asks, "How do you manage your moments of inspiration when your kiddos were small? Ours are 4 and 2 and love them to bits, but there are times when I have to wait days to do something about a spark."
That is a part of having kids, is that there are times when you just can't do things. And I did that. I guess you could say I had a bonus because I work at night, and so I would be up, and the first part of my day is usually at around 2 or 3, which while they're in school is usually about the time they get home. So I see my kids when they get home.
Yes.
And then.
But when they were little, when they were 2 and 4, it would just be.
They just hang out in the studio, and they would. I talked to a friend of mine. I don't know what people might probably know his name pretty well. Some of them do. Cirillo Cabral. I asked him the same question because he had kids, and he's a painter, and he said you just get used to learning how to paint with a kid on your lap.
That is true. Yes.
And that's what he said. And now that is more or less possible at different times.
Right. Yes.
When they're a sack of potatoes, they'll sit there. When they're not a sack of potatoes, they won't.
Don't call them a sack of potatoes.
Yeah, when they're little and they don't move around a lot.
When they don't have the ability to grab shit off the desk, right?
Right. Or drink paint thinner or whatever. You don't want that stuff around. Little kids when they can get up and grab it.
Yeah, when all of that was put up and everything.
Because I ended up not doing a lot of oil stuff when we had little kids in the house, just because I didn't want that stuff to, But nowadays I just they go in and out of my studio all the time.
There are times that you have to look at them and go, I am.
Well, we can't play all the time. We can't play all the time, but
no, because
we
when
can
you
communicate.
work at home, the issue is sometimes they, they're home for the summer now, and they're like, "Hey," and you go, I gotta have. It's mostly a problem with me because I don't work at night.
I do have a door on my studio, but they know how to open doors now, so it doesn't really help. But there are times when I can't play, but I'm still here to communicate.
Right.
Well,
and you set them up if they're 2 and 4 years old. A 4-year-old will hit there, and you can kind of. Yeah. It's hard. I mean, it is hard.
There's no easy solution.
And especially if you're the woman in our society, we're the main caregivers. You know.
This is true.
Barefoot Moose says, started drawing because of anxiety and was wondering if it helps you like it does her.
I think it does, actually, and I actually find myself, we were talking about this earlier, I get anxious when I can't draw. So, in one way, it's like, it's a necessity for me because, and Vicki knows this, I'll start to drive everybody crazy if I'm not able to sit down and work.
Or if he's in that pacing 2 days before he gets started on the next piece.
It depends on the piece. Like, I just started this without much forethought, but if I have a piece that I want to think about, it usually will take me anywhere from 1 to 3 days to figure it. And now this is personal work when you have the luxury of doing that.
Right.
I don't always have the luxury of taking time to figure things out in that way. And most people don't have that luxury all the time either, you know. But when I'm doing stuff like for my show, for my solo show, I'll spend sometimes 1 to 3 days just thinking about what I'm doing and looking at things and looking at my drawings and sketches that I have for ideas, because I get into a mode where I have so many things I want to do that I can't, none of them are weighted heavily in any one direction or another, and so I'll sit there and think about it. It usually takes me about 3 days for a large piece to get to a point where I've resolved myself enough in my own head just to start something. But when I started, I'm usually there from that point on, and I work consistently. So even when it takes 3 days, which that's the longest it usually takes.
Yes. Your favorite medium to draw on? I'm going to give you 2 guesses. I will answer that. Pencil is his favorite medium.
Well, yeah, graphite. I'm to medium to draw on. I have about 4 or 5 different papers that I go to back and forth to all the time.
They're on the website. You can see all the different.
Yeah, I mean this is Strathmore heavyweight. Actually, it's a heavier medium surface drawing paper, but it's a heavyweight. It's like a stage between paper and Bristol.
Pardon us. I'm just going to sit down. Hello from Portland.
Portland.
Meadowlight says, good to hear. Thank you.
So,
been enjoying your work.
I want to mention too that it was when we had kids though, and that they had demands on my time, that I started realizing if I didn't have structure in the way that I approached my work, that I would never get anything done.
Yeah, because not to knock us beforehand, but we used to think, oh my gosh, we don't have any time to do this or do that. And then all of a sudden you have a kid and you go, what
was I doing before?
The fuck were we doing? Because now we really don't have any fucking time.
Right. And so it was like, once that happened, I had to really get strict about when I had time to working during the time that I had.
Getting your ass down there. So, when it was sitting down, it wasn't just...
So there's a phrase that I adopted from a fortune cookie that seems to work out pretty well, which is little and often makes much. Yeah. So even if I could only work for 10 or 15 minutes at a time, I'd sit down and do 10 or 15 minutes at a time, Right. But I would do it as consistently during whatever downtime as I could, so that adds up over the day,
Yes. Reynolds asked a slightly personal question, but that's okay. Do you make enough money to live solely off of your work? Sorry if it's too personal.
No, I do. We do now, but it's not. I can't say that it's solely because my wife works in the business. We both work at this business.
Right, but I quit 20 years ago, the outside job.
Yeah.
So for 20 years we have, and there have been leaner times than others.
Right.
We get your fat and your lean time. So you learn how to hoard your money when it all comes in and not just go off on vacation to go skiing or something like that.
I don't do a lot of extraneous activity. So it I also at the risk of sounding like somebody without a life, I don't have a ton of hobbies that aren't working on what I do. But that's because that's what I like. That's not because that's what everybody should do.
Someone's asking if you also do paintings.
I do paint actually. I just have the one that I did from. Yeah. I started it at Glasburn.
I know. I keep pushing him to paint. He's very fast.
I'm faster painting than I am drawing.
Yes.
It's just that I don't know. I just have to
painting, drawing.
So.
Do you often draw from visual aids or all from inside your head?
The answer is both. I sometimes will pick up something and draw from it. Like I'll have this piece of bone sitting on my desk, and I'll think about the textures as I work. But very often I don't draw exactly what's there. I'll draw the feeling of what's there in what I do. And if I'm doing realism, I definitely have
Right.
reference for
There's
that.
numerous pictures of hands and feet and people wrapped in clothes.
Whenever
Cloth.
if I'm doing a figure, if I can hire a model and shoot reference for it, I definitely will.
Yes.
Just because you know, as I adapt it to what I'm going to do, I still want those realistic the cues of the arrangement of detail that makes something real.
Right.
Is really hard to fake sometimes. You know, you can get lucky every now and then, but
Hello from Springfield, Massachusetts.
oh, hello,
And
Springfield.
Japan.
And Japan, awesome. I love hearing from people from all across the
I
country.
know. Ecuador was earlier. Do you imagine those drawings before drawing, or do you create them in the moment without knowing the result? Both.
Again, the answer is both, depending on the drawing. This, I didn't have any idea what I was going to start with, but I've done centaurs and satyrs and stuff before, so this is not a stretch. When I'm doing something like I said earlier, that I had an idea for a piece that is going to involve having automobiles in it, that's something I'm going to have to plan because I can't just make up a car.
Right.
I mean, other people who've drawn automobiles can sit down and draw, can
Yeah,
make them up.
you can't
But I
do that.
haven't. I don't have that visual, I don't have the vocabulary for that. So I will have to research it. So it's a little bit of both depending on what I want to do.
Right.
And I guess the point is, at the end of that is, there's no rule. Do what you have to do to get to the image you need to do.
Right.
You know?
Exactly. It's your own art.
Yeah.
We can tell you all the things that we do, but it might not work.
Well, even if I did, it's most assuredly the one thing that I kind of like to tell people is that all of the advice people give you is what they do. But everyone, I mean, there are people in the world who will give you the exact opposite advice from each other, who both do great work. And they'll tell you completely different things about how to go about doing it.
Right.
And
So
you just have to find your way.
where it works for you and what, because, that's just what it is.
What the important part is to be open to trying it in
Right.
whatever way works for you. And never forgetting to do the stuff that you like to do, along with the stuff that you feel like you have to do sometimes. Mm-hmm. Because you should always be able to do what you like to do or what you want to do. In terms of doing art, like I like rendering things, I like detail. There's a lot of press and a lot of, I think maybe it's because there's a lot of ateliers where this is a type of painting that's taught a lot to go very gestural and expressionistic, and I do that when I feel like it suits me, but I also like falling into details and just playing with them, and that's one of the things that alleviates my own anxieties is the meditation of getting lost in
Noodling
details.
At that, yes. We used to laugh because he would go, "Look what I did," and I couldn't even tell.
And I'm not saying that you shouldn't do the expression stuff. I'm saying that there's enough room in the world for everybody.
Someone said hello from Minnesota.
Minnesota.
We get that. We haven't lived in Minnesota, but we
Well,
have been
kind of.
there.
We lived in Chaska for a few months out of every year when we
Yes.
did the Renaissance Fair.
That's true. We did the Renaissance Fair. That's different art, yeah.
Yeah, I used to do a lot more like high, I guess
High
you would call
fantasy?
it high fantasy or medieval fantasy, medieval romance kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. And cute.
And yeah, I did cute as well.
He's very good at cute.
Cute's a trap.
Cute. It's not a well,
No, because
yeah.
it gets it's
Anything
so
can be
popular
a
that
trap.
it's easy to.
So
and
was pinup was a trap.
pinup was a trap too, because once people start seeing you for that, that's the only way they see you.
Yeah, Helen doesn't like that.
And I have a hard time even doing series work because I'll sit there
That's
and
why
I
I
go,
laugh when
well,
I say something
yeah.
about the tarot.
Well, but I've been doing pieces on a theme essentially for my groups for my solo show, right? So I figured it out that it's not so much about replicating the same piece in slightly different ways. It's replicating, or not replicating, but discovering that feeling in each piece that you felt in the first one.
Right.
You know, so if there was something about the first one that excited me, I have to have that in each successive
All right.
piece in a series.
All right,
So-
I have to, our website, yes, it's still down. The kids are home from school. But it's Alan Williams Studio. You can see the art. Just email me if you are interested in anything.
Mm-hmm.
So the website is Alan Williams Studio. Our YouTube channel, which this eventually goes up on our YouTube channel if you want to. I'm just getting things going there. And by the way, we have to do that video on transfers this week
Oh, okay.
for Dan. What was I saying? Our
You were-
YouTube channel. My God, I am tired. Is Alan
Well, you-
Williams Studio. Sorry.
She's been up since 5:30 this morning and has been going nonstop. So
Twitter is I Just Draw. What do you think of the Mitsubishi Hayuni art set? If you have used it, you don't use a set, but you use.
I actually bought the range they had. I think the art set is the range from one to the other, from like it's from like 9H to 10B. I think is what it is. And if you're into it, I mean that's cool. I don't use most of those pencils. I use mostly from HB down. So
Softwise down. Yes.
Well, because
But he likes to buy the whole set. We
And-
also
and
have a
I
whole
almost-
set of what are the color pencils? That
oh,
we
the
have?
polychromos.
That the kids use now.
Yeah.
$300 set of. I'm like, it's.
But I have them when I need them.
I know.
So, and it's just you know you don't have to have them, but
Someone thought this was a replay.
Oh.
We're here live.
yeah, no, this is. But I've done some stuff like this before. But my friend Daryl wanted to see me draw in a circle, so I drew in a
Yeah,
circle.
that was for the time lapse.
Yeah, the
Hi,
reason I put the
Edward.
circle here was for what?
Oh, Edward says hi from North Carolina.
Oh,
We
nice.
live on the Gulf Coast. We're down here, Hurricane Alley. Not really.
I love storms, and I can say that you know we haven't been here during a major hurricane, so I mean obviously those are terrible for people, but we've only had I guess Hurricane Nate's the largest one that we've had since we moved here.
Oh yeah, we've only been here 2 years.
But Vicky's parents live down here, and they went through Katrina and others as well.
Right.
So
Well, I went through a couple when I was.
You did,
lived here, yeah. How many years have you been drawing? We've been together almost
all of the years.
29 years.
Yeah.
30 years?
Yeah.
29 years.
Yeah.
So he was drawing before that.
Professionally since the late '80s, but
Your
I've
English
been drawing.
is very good, Dave.
I've been drawing since I was, you know, like 2 or 3 years old.
Professionally for almost 30 years.
Yeah.
Both of you have such a great attitude towards the art and fellow artists. Humble, honest, and real. Very
Well, thank you.
inspiring. That is very nice of you to say.
Thank you. I don't. We were talking about this with MasterChef earlier. We were watching MasterChef, believe it or not, and my daughter and I were talking, and I said, if I were going to compete against somebody, and I could choose my competitors, I would always choose to compete against those people who will challenge me the most. So I would pick the toughest competitors. If I wanted to win, just win a competition, right? You would just choose the people that you knew you could beat. But the same thing with art. It's like I feel like if somebody starts learning to do the stuff that I like to do or does a technique that I've done and does it better than me, that just means I have to step up my game or just feel happy for them that they're doing it so well. You know,
Right.
I don't really feel a sense of negativity about sharing information
No.
because I feel like that's what should be shared. You know, it's like I can't give away all my art, but I can certainly give away the information and people can make their
You
own.
certainly try, but I don't let
I've
you.
tried, but
You
she
don't.
gets mad at me when I give it away.
Schizo Giraffe says you should have a camera above and record the whole process and play it on YouTube at twice the speed.
I have a boom up here that I
That
haven't put
doesn't-
my camera on yet.
You know
But
what?
but your suggestion is
I have been telling him that for 2 years.
well, that's
It's not untrue.
it's going to happen. I have the camera up there now.
I know. Well, you don't have the camera. You have a camera flashy thing.
Well, this is a CCD. This is so I can look at my work from a distance. I can look at it on my phone or on the viewer through this and see my work at a distance.
You could just
like-
stand up and
I
put a
could.
real camera up.
But then I would have to stand up.
You would, yeah, but then you could put your phone up there or a real camera.
Well, that's
and-
that's what it's for.
Well,
That's why we have
Yeah,
it.
that's what I'm saying. Do it now.
She's not usually this mean to me.
This is not mean. Yeah, you've seen me mean. People don't think I'm mean, but
No.
you've seen me mean. I see
No,
your butt toenails.
you're not mean.
No. When you draw and get a drawing that you already know in your imagination what you have to do you spend hours without noticing the time, or do you draw methodically like the work with schedules?
I don't really do schedules very much on my own at all, ever. Like I normally am supposed to be going to bed at around 5 or 6:30 in the morning, but lately it's been around 8 or 9. And it's just if I'm into it, I'm into it. And here's my thing is you should have a work ethic. You should always be working whether you're inspired or not. But if you are inspired, you should definitely pay attention to that and work on that. Don't wait for inspiration to work, but don't ignore inspiration when it hits.
I'm sorry. We're not going to pause, but we do have to move
Yeah,
everywhere.
let the dog out.
We have to let the dog out. Literally, let the dog out. Come here. Come here. You. Come here. Come here.
He doesn't want to go out. Hey,
Oh, he's just being a pain.
he's messing with you.
He is messing with me. Why did you start with the circle? Just because his friend's
Oh,
in it?
my friend Daryl wanted because I've done time lapse where I'll make a circle so I know where the camera is.
Yes.
And so I know what to not to go out of, and he wanted to see me. He wanted me to do that, and
Do you have any tips on getting your art in front of production companies? Do you tend to approach them, or do they mostly come to you nowadays?
I sympathize. It's not the easiest thing in the world to do because there are people that you can get your work in front of that have mailing addresses. Like Weta takes portfolios, and I think there are times when like Industrial Light and Magic take portfolios and things like that, and they even have a competition at some points. In terms of the people that I've worked with, my situation was such that it's like I can't advise people to do what I did because it was more of a lottery though. The way that I did
because
it.
you were working on other things.
I was working.
We had booths from Gen Con to Dragon Con,
Right.
to San Diego Comic Con,
Right.
to Origins Game Fair to Gen Con. It's like, did I say that already? I think
Yeah. Well, the thing that
we had those booths, and that's when someone happened to see you. So
Right. Yeah, I mean, I guess you could say that we were at places where they were likely to be
right
with work that I wanted to do.
and
So
you had your own work, your own personal work that we would sell there, and so then you would also go around and early on you would go around and try to drum up work.
So Guillermo's notorious for actually liking to see people's portfolios. If you ever see him in the real life and stop him, he'll look at things. There aren't a lot of directors that'll do that. But you can find VFX houses that work in film and stuff, and you can submit stuff to them and say you're freelance. And a lot of those guys will hire freelance artists. I have a friend, I think Mauricio does that. He goes back and forth to different VFX houses and does that. So, so yeah, it's like it's hard to get yourself in front of a specific director, but I think that the easiest way of getting into the industry would be to do something through a VFX house, and there's a drawback to that too, because it's they tend to hire generalists, people who can do a lot of different things, like not just design but also 3D or rigging and sculpting or whatever.
Right.
So they tend to want like more Renaissance type, but if you can do a little bit of everything and you do it well, that's probably the most direct route that I could think of.
Mm-hmm. Someone asked how old you are.
Me, I'm 52.
He is. I met him and he had no gray hair.
No. But that's not a comment. It just you didn't give me gray hair. It just happened.
Maybe it gave you a little.
But in terms of reference, though, I do make stuff. I do make maquettes and things. Like I sculpted like this face, and then I cast it to play with it. Mm-hmm. I'll make my own things here and there. And
the lighting.
What's
we're like losing half of our lights in here.
I know some of our lights went out.
Oh, I gotta put some more light bulbs in there.
But you see it?
Yes, that's better. Thank you.
Yeah. And this is just for my own reference,
Alex says it's interesting what you said about working whether or not you're inspired. That is a big thing.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. Because if you look at it like this: if you're working when you're not inspired, you're making progress because you're still perfecting the craft part of what you're doing.
Right.
You're making it a professional endeavor, and then if you just don't ignore inspiration when it happens, because that's sort of like the reward for working all the time.
Oh yeah, he'll be in the middle of a piece and he'll get so close, and then all of a sudden I'll wake up and there's a whole another thing started.
Right.
I'm like, just finish.
And strangely enough, a lot of times when I take contract work, I get more inspiration from my own work when I'm doing that, and I think maybe it's because I'm restrained by the contract work because it has parameters that have to be followed.
Right.
That my mind starts going, well, what if I did this? And then I go, I can't do that for this, but I'll sketch it out and keep it for myself at that point.
Yes.
Luis
asks, do you have any books you can cite that influenced your studies about light and shadow?
Well, light and shadow. Most of what I've learned about light and shadow is by lighting something and setting it up and looking at it. And actually, I've done some 3D sculpting in terms of like ZBrush and things, and I always look at the lights and shadows in there because that's how you define the form.
Oh, yeah.
And so I have a book. I have Gurney's book about light and shadow, which is an excellent book, James Gurney. Mm-hmm. And I suppose if I were to say that one book is very inclusive, and it's I think
light. What is it called?
I'm not
You
sure.
have to look at James Gurney.
He only has he's got a few hardcover book. I mean, actual published books that are about like drawing the imagination from the imagination, and the other one I think is Color and Light. I think it's Color and Light is what it's called. But if you just look up James Gurney books, that's you'll see
Right.
it. It'll show up.
Greetings from Argentina.
Oh, greetings.
And another flag came up.
Yeah, I wish. I mean, it would be cool to
Thank
learn.
you for answering all the questions.
Oh, no
you
problem.
said.
No problem whatsoever. So, I mean, very often I'll do the opposite that they tell you in terms of learning to design. I'll start with detail. But see, they don't say the same thing about design when you're doing work for yourself that's going to be like, I guess you could say, fine art work. Just like in modeling for industry and for film and stuff, the models that you make, the sculpts that you make have to look fairly complete and polished. Whereas when you do like your own things, it's okay to leave tool marks and brush strokes and stuff like that because it shows people that you actually did it. Whereas in a film, they don't want the kaiju and Pacific Rim to look handmade.
Right.
You know. So
Right.
I mean, there's a lot more leeway in terms of what you can get away with when you do work for yourself. Obviously.
Right.
Yeah.
Love your artwork. Saludo.
Oh, thank you.
We don't speak Spanish.
But
No.
we
I'm
appreciate
sorry.
it.
And we don't. It's really showing when our lack of.
Well,
A
I
kid
mean,
needs to step up. He needs to
huh?
get better at Spanish.
Duncan's taking.
Duncan.
Yeah, he's taking Spanish.
Yeah, he's taking Spanish. But
But,
who you know the lady at my mom's church gives Spanish lessons.
does she?
Yep.
That's cool. So it's really funny because somebody asked about where we lived earlier, and we do live on the Gulf Coast. But fully 70% of the people I've met since I moved here have been from California.
Yes. There's a whole bunch for California or somewhere else.
Yeah,
Lots of people from California.
yeah. And it's specifically at maybe Ocean Springs because it's kind of a small art. It's an art community,
I don't know. Long Beach is
and
like,
I guess
Long Beach is a really artsy community.
we live in a community that's sort of based around a local artist that became kind of famous in around the 70s.
No,
Or earlier than that.
earlier than that.
The
40s, 50s.
Yeah, he did a lot of woodcuts.
Anderson.
Walter Anderson, and he did woodcuts, and his family were heavy into the arts and stuff, so they made it kind of a big deal around
He
here.
would go out to the island and stay there and paint and draw on the island.
Everybody thought he was weird because he went out
Because
to
he
an
was
island
weird.
and drew all day.
Yes. No, he would stay out there for like days.
Yeah.
He was a little bonkers. Maybe. I don't know. Walter Anderson, then his son Peter Anderson did pottery, kind of based on his artwork.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a bunch of his murals in the town.
Mm-hmm.
He said, "Thank you for answering."
No problem.
Our lack of language skills comes out. in
Well,
this.
the only
And the inability
I
to
wish-
translate. If Instagram would
I
translate.
don't. What I don't want is people to think that we don't, we don't respect them because we don't know how to speak the language. What I do want to be able to do is respond to people. So as soon as they come up with a translation,
I know, it would be
software
much
that would
easier.
work, kind of real time, I'm on it.
Tombow Mono 100s you can get through jetpens.com.
Yeah.
Jetpens, JETPENS.com for all you other art fanatics. It shows up on our credit card a lot.
Usually about once every other month.
Like no, every other month. What are you talking about? Well, when you buy 6 boxes of them all.
And I usually do. I buy a lot of pencils at once, so I don't have to make an order right away.
He's a student of architecture and he loves your drawings.
Oh, thank you.
Do you ever use colors in your drawings?
I don't usually draw with color. I do have color pencil, and I have done entire pieces that were started with color. Like the Lovecraftian
You know
nodule
what?
thing was.
I know, and you know what? You're a very good painter, so you need to. Come on. I'm pushing him.
She is. Well, I do have paintings to do, so.
Oh, someone else said they got some Tombow Mono 100. He likes the 100s off of Amazon, probably.
Yeah, you can get them on Amazon. You can get them more than at JetPens.
Yes.
But I just use JetPens because it's like it's like an all-in-one go-to place. And plus they have a lot of cool, distracting stuff that I can just impulse buy sometimes.
Stop.
I only ever impulse buy things that I actually use, which just sounds like the opposite of impulse, but it's true.
What?
Yeah.
You
I
sell-
defy you to prove that I don't use anything I have.
Do you sell a lot of original art or prints? Do you have a hard time letting go of originals?
Yes, we most of what we make our money through arts and prints that we sell of my own work, and there are times when I've had a piece that's hung around for a while that I've gotten attached to, and there are times when I've regretted having sold something because maybe I did something in it that I forgot how to do, because I didn't have it sitting in front of me all the time, because the nature of how I work, there are times when I'll just start kind of exploring things on the fly, and something will happen, and it may never happen that way again, So I'd like to have the piece sometimes sitting in front of me at different times.
But it has helped when I've been recording some of it.
Yeah.
Because you're like,
well, that helps
now
a lot.
I can't remember how I did this. And I was like, oh yeah, but it's on Patreon. Oh, we have Patreon. That's what I forgot.
Yeah.
Forgot to mention that. That's right.
Oh yeah, we do have a Patreon.
Patreon.com/Alan Williams. If you want to, I've put up some of the
longer videos are on there, I guess, and everything is pretty much like all of these videos are archived there as well.
Brazil and Colombia said hello. Yes.
Oh, hello.
You can find these on Patreon first, and then they'll go up on our YouTube channel. Alan Williams Studio is YouTube, and just Alan Williams at Patreon. How did you find your style? Easy Peasy Art wants to know.
So, what I like to tell people is I actually did I did the opposite of what they normally tell you to do. Everybody usually says, don't worry about it, just work, and eventually your style will find you. That didn't work with me because I kept working in other people's styles because I didn't have a style of my own. I would try to draw like, I would work like Drew Struzan for a little bit, sort of. I would try to anyway. I would try to work like, my favorite artists, and I did that for a long time. But it was when I actively started looking at the stuff that I liked, and I said, I think my style is hidden in the work that I like, because I like it for a reason, and most likely the reason that I like it is something that I want to incorporate into my own work. So when I started noticing the stuff that I would linger on, and then ask myself, what is it about it that I really like, and how can I transform that into my own thing? Without ripping somebody off. How can I incorporate that into my own thing? And that's when I started feeling like I started figuring things out. I started noticing what I notice. It's like what they tell you about good photographers. Good photography is, on its simplest level, paying attention to the fact that you just noticed something. Whereas people will go by something and go, oh, that looks cool. A photographer does that and then takes a photograph because he knows that it looks cool because it distracted him.
That's what I can't do. That's what I
Well,
don't have.
some people don't. I mean, some people, but
I just have blurry pictures of our children going by. We haven't had a nice picture of our kid for like 5 years. Either kid.
Well, but that's how I find I credit that, in part to being able to find the direction that I wanted to go in. I started asking myself, what is it that I really want to see? What do I want to do? And there's still a discrepancy between sometimes what I see in my head and what I get on paper, but very often, because of the nature of being explorational, I'll find things on the paper that I didn't conceive of in my head at first. So it works out that way too.
All right, we probably have 5 or 10 minutes. I think 10 minutes. I don't know. I started late.
Yeah.
And our website is Alan Williams Studio. Our YouTube channel is at Alan Williams Studio. Patreon is patreon.com/Alan Williams. We keep everything low there, but I have like a series of videos that I did from the last piece that you have finished now each night. Not of you actually drawing, but talking about what you were doing and everything. So you can always check out Patreon if you like for a little bit, or just follow us there too. Hipster King asked, how did you fight stiffening up when detailing? I've been told I could do good gesture work and then tighten up. And it loses life.
Yeah, I mean, in the past when I've done a layout for a piece and then translated it onto a board and then painted it on, that's usually when it stiffens up for me. But I guess what it is that I'll have such a vague notion of things like where this is going that I'm willing to go with where it takes me, and it doesn't
have to fit what you drew.
I try to be less demanding, I guess, and more accommodating of what is happening. And that seems to help me not stiffen up as much. But then again, I don't. You have to be in a situation where you don't have to always produce a plan for what you're doing, which is hard to do if you're doing illustration. And
Right. If
illustration,
you're working for someone, you can't go, well, I know you wanted that, but here I made it a profile
Right.
instead. And
so when I do illustration, it gets a little more stiff. But then what I allow myself to do is change, like even if I've done a layout, when I do the execution, I'll let myself draw outside the lines.
right.
And not necessarily go back and just fill in the blanks when I've done the layout. I'll let myself redraw it over itself in a way.
Someone asked if you use oil. Yes, he uses oil paint.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
I love oil paints, actually.
Mm-hmm. and someone asked you. A lot of creations have stories created behind them. Yes, a
They
lot
do.
of them do. The stories will be included in the book too.
Yeah,
Then the name of the book coming out in March.
will be the Book of the Covenant.
The Book of the Covenant.
Yeah, the actual solo show that I'm doing at Copro in August is called Covenant, and if everything works out the way that I hope it does, a lot of the pieces from that show will also be included in the book. So, it's some of the work that I've been doing lately has been for that show.
Yes. But we'll also have the stories with them, right?
Yes.
Yes.
And I do have a lot of stories for pieces, especially, if it's an inspired piece. It normally, if something is inspired, the story comes with it like synchronously, simultaneously, I guess is the word I'm looking for.
Concurrently.
Concurrently, yeah,
Oh,
that works too.
You know me so well. Amy Baker Art, you need to go back to the ball.
Or start drawing, because Amy Baker can draw very well.
She's in a ball, like in a ball gown.
Well, yeah,
like,
but she wants to be drawing, or she wouldn't be at a ball watching us draw.
that is true. You're tagged, Amy. Where did you come up with the title of the book?
It sort of came up with this sort of agreement that I made with myself. The covenant being, obviously a covenant is an agreement. I made up an agreement with myself to kind of express through the work that I'm doing the frustrations that I feel with the world that I live in. Mm-hmm. So, and that's my agreement. But it's also about the individual characters in the book and their metaphorical agreement, because most of the characters that I draw, even though they look dark, are very much they're guardians or stewards of humanity. Mm-hmm. I just don't buy into the particular subscription that things have to be beautiful in order to be good. Yeah,
as we all know. Oh, Amy's at an army ball.
I'd be drawing too.
Oh, and she said, "Ugh." Yeah, but you look good.
She does. If you're in that, she posted a picture. She was in a red dress the other day. Yeah. I didn't save that one.
You can find. She said, "See," because you went, "Oh yeah, I'd be drawing too." Love you too, Amy. She is at Amy Baker Art. She's also another artist, a friend
She
of
does
ours.
a lot of portraits, which are really well done, really well
Yes,
executed.
Absolutely. And getting better and better. I noticed her latest ones.
But
I know. So this will be up for the next 24 hours under stories if you missed the beginning part. And you were going to go over how to do some transferring on Patreon this week.
yeah, there's people were talking about working with the graphite washes, that it's very difficult to sketch on top of it. So what you usually have to do is do a drawing and then translate it or transfer it somehow to the board, whether you use a transfer paper or a projector or there's a lot of different ways to do it.
Oh, we got 30 seconds.
So that's going to be a video that we're going to probably do for yeah.
Yes. All right. So see us on Patreon at Alan Williams and YouTube at Alan Williams Studio. And we will see you guys next week. And we'll check out Heredity. Absolutely. Bye. Go take a nap.
Oh, yeah, it's time for a nap.